Right. Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another interview with Macabre Daily. My name is Brian Finnerty, and I am so excited to be here today with Joshua R. Pangborn. Good morning.
Morning, Brian. So good to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. I first became aware of Joshua and his work actually at the Home Horror Film Festival back in June of this year, when I had the privilege of watching, I think it's your second feature, right? The
Yes.
Brooklyn
Yep.
Butcher. Um, I honestly wasn't that familiar with your work before that, so I had no idea what I was getting into, and I loved it. It immediately went to the top of my list of the movies I saw at that fest that I had to write about.
I'm so
Um,
happy because there are some amazing movies in that festival. So
there
I
was.
appreciate to be among the top of the list for you there. So
Oh, totally. And so yeah, like I mentioned, that was your second feature. You're
Hmm.
currently working on your third feature,
Yes.
The Contract, right?
Yep.
You've done some web series, you've written plays, you've written a book, which is about to get a re-release in hardcover. Writer, director, actor. Did I miss anything?
I also wear the hat of editor most of the time. So
Editor. Okay.
I've cut down the number of heads that I have. So I only have that many hats at this point, I think. But
So just to start off, to make me and our listeners feel better, is there anything that you're not good at?
singing and dancing. And despite the fact that I have released a musical album and I am singing on it,
Oh my
I would
gosh.
say that I'm not the. I would say that I don't think a lot of people who are not professional singers love their singing voice anyway. But
Yeah.
dancing, we'll go with dancing for sure. There we go.
Okay. So you might still do it. We might still get like a horror musical from you, but
I
you're not
love
going to
singing.
promise that it's going to be good.
I would love to. Oh, it'll be good. It just won't have. It won't always sound great if it's from me. But I have a lot of amazing people who I work with who are incredible singers. And I love singing. So I'm gonna if I'm writing it, I'm gonna give myself a song. So
That would be amazing. So yeah, so thank you for joining us. I figured kind of the place to start off would be kind of the company under which you do most of your work. You founded your own company called Sidekick Productions, right?
yes,
Um,
that was 2011 or 2011, I believe. So
okay. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the mission statement that you put out there on your website is to create stories that are queer, fat positive, and sex positive, right?
that's correct. Yes.
So yeah, would you mind maybe just I guess just telling us a little bit about that mission statement and maybe why you formed the company and how that came about?
Sure, absolutely. I when I graduated college in a long time ago, I decided to I wanted to have a production company for theater because I
Mhm.
at the time I was working in the theater exclusively, and so I came up with a company called the Living Room Theater Company, and we did a couple plays, and then for a number of reasons we dissolved the company because it just needed to be dissolved. We'll leave it there. Nobody cares about the backstory of
I won't ask.
or maybe they do, but they're not going to hear it right now. So, but so a couple of years after that, I took time off to focus on my doctorate to make sure I finished with that, and then I got into a festival with a play that I wrote. And I wanted to have I was like, well, if I'm gonna have to produce it myself, I might as well start my next theater company. I wanted to do that anyway. So I thought about what I was doing before, which was the company existed to put on plays. But this time I wanted to have a company that sort of had some sort of greater purpose sounds wrong, but greater purpose, I guess we'll go with,
Yeah.
other than just putting on plays. And so I thought, well, what am I not seeing in the industry that I want to see? What am I not
Mhm.
hearing that I want to hear? And those were stories that resonated with people who look like me and people who I know who look like me, which are queer, fat people. And we don't have stories that center on them, or if we do, the stories are always about weight loss or stories about wanting to or being rejected because they're fat and
Mhm.
or wanting to find love but you can't because you're fat, and it's just that's not the stories. There's more stories out there than that. It's kind of like when you're having a queer story but they're only about HIV or they're only about gay bashing. It's like, yes, those stories happen,
Yeah.
but there's more stories that you can tell with queer people and fat people than stories about those particular traumas. There's plenty of other trauma that they can have besides that.
We're
There's
very well
I mean, we
rounded.
all
We can
have,
have
right?
all sorts of trauma.
Exactly. So I thought, okay, I'm going to tell stories about queer, fat positive, sex positive stories, and I'm going to center them on those voices. Now, will other people be in them? Of course, you don't have to be queer or fat or well, everybody should be sex positive that's involved in the project that we do, but you
The
don't have to
one
be queer or fat to
requirement.
be in them. But at the same time you don't that's the stories are going to center on those voices and everything.
Mhm.
And then I thought, well, what am I going to call it? And I am obsessed with or was at the time, and I still am, I guess. Yes, I'm very much obsessed with Robin from Batman and Robin, and I thought, well, queer people and fat people are often considered sidekicks in some of the mainstream Hollywood projects.
Mhm.
So why not? If I'm centering the stories on the people who are sidekicks, let's call it Sidekick Productions. And voila.
Oh, that is a perfect way to name that company. This is a bit of a tangent, but have you seen the Teen Titans movie? Teen Titans Go to the Movies?
I have not watched Teen Titans Go very much.
Oh.
That came about after I sort of because it's geared more for a younger audience, which is great.
Mhm.
I think that every audience should have the right depiction for them. I love Teen Titans, the series that was in 2005, I think.
Yeah.
That's a great series, and I haven't seen Teen Titans Go to the Movies. I'm tempted to watch it because I know it bridges the two, I believe. So
Yeah, you gotta check it out. My 5-year-old is obsessed with it, but even as an adult, I love it, and it's genuinely hilarious, and it leans so heavily into that. Like, I'm a sidekick, and I want to be the leading
Oh, well, then
man.
perfect. I have to watch that. Thank you for pointing that out to me. I might watch it later today.
Nice, nice. Let me know what you think. But I know I digress. Um, So I wonder, as you said, like trying to tell fat positive, sex positive stories. I wonder if you could maybe even just say something a little bit about the language, because I, I am someone who's never going to profess to have transcended all of the stigmas and the internal prejudices that we have. I do my best to be aware of it. I think particularly with a word like fat, our society still is figuring out if we're comfortable with that word,
Mhm.
if that is fair to say. Like even preparing for this interview, I like felt like I had to rehearse it a couple times to just say, it is okay for me to say the word fat. It is not a dirty word. It is not a bad word.
100%. I've. You're not the first person that's told me that, and you probably won't be the last person that's told me that. I think the brand when I first did it, it was uh, size blind,
Mhm.
and it was body positive.
Yeah.
But as I as I saw how things were going on in the world, body positive really became co-opted by these folk who are, uh, let's just say, very, very fit, and somehow they are still doing body positive posts, or like, oh, I gained 5 pounds, but I'm so body positive right now, and
Mhm.
hashtag body positive, and it's like, yes, great. I Everyone's journey is different, everyone's view of their body is different, but it's not reflecting of the stories and the concepts that I was trying to give across. Because if you search for body positive on Instagram or something, another social media website, you're going
Yeah.
to get a lot of health influencers, and you're going to get a
Right.
lot of people who are gym folk. And again, everybody can go to the gym. So when I say gym folk, I'm specifically referring to the stereotype of gym folk. So I guess that's wrong as well. But it's basically, I think everyone knows what I mean when I say you go to Instagram and you look for body positive and who you find. And I
100%.
thought, well, what I'm really doing is telling stories about people who look like me and my friends,
Mm,
fat people. And I know that fat is treated like a dirty word. It's a
mm,
word that people don't want to apply to themselves, but it's just an adjective, and it's just an adjective that accurately reflects what we are. We're not. I mean, some folk don't like to call themselves that, and I understand that and I respect that.
mhm.
I'm not afraid to use the word fat, and I think that I'm hoping that more people will learn not to be over time. I'm also aware that in certain settings, it's still a word that's very taboo, and I will switch to plus size with the right audience and everything. I certainly don't want to make anyone very uncomfortable,
Yeah.
but I mean, the opposite of fat positive is fat phobia. I don't know if it's the exact opposite, but so
Okay.
it's the word is in the phobia. We might as well put it in the positive as well. So,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's a little similar to like how we talk about the word queer too. I mean,
mhm.
I personally am very comfortable with that word. I like that we use it as a kind of just a general descriptive. But similar to the word fat, I'm aware that some people are not comfortable with it. For some people, it is. It does still feel like a harmful word, and sometimes we have to do a little bit of like switching and translating. So it's like I might
I
say
have an
queer to
older
you.
colleague. Yeah, I have an older
Mhm.
colleague at work who we had the conversation a few years ago. He's about 20 years older than I am, and for him, he was very uncomfortable with the word queer. He was talking about I don't use that word. I don't like that word. And
Mhm.
over the years, he's actually evolved to understand and accept it, and use it even. But I know when we had this conversation early on, he was very much against it, and I understand why. Because when I was growing up, and probably when you were growing up, Brian, we also uh, the word was only used in one way, and that was derogatory. So
Oh yeah, definitely. Um, I wonder if, like, when you think about when you were younger, maybe even before you knew that you were interested in telling your own stories, do you have early or formative memories of seeing fatness portrayed in movies and television, either positive, negative, or neutral?
the only ways I remember probably two very distinct ways it was portrayed, and that was the movie Shawshank Redemption. Uh,
Mhm.
there was when Andy Dufresne goes to prison for the first time, and they go through the whole delousing process, and they get walked
Mhm.
in naked and all that. The first person in line is a fat man, and
Okay.
the everyone focuses on him and mocking him and saying that he's I forget the language they use. I think the fresh fish or the fresh bird or something like that that's going to cry that night or something. And so he was portrayed as a person of mockery and a person who to be derided, and a person who was weak basically. And then of course the other one was the Santa Claus, where Tim Allen was horrified by all the weight he was gaining, which admittedly he was getting it very fast, so I can understand why he'd be a little concerned health wise. Yeah, like where did this all come from overnight? But those are two that really stick out for young Josh, I think.
Yeah.
Other than that, I mean, you have like in Cheers, you have Norm and Cliff,
Mhm.
but they're the perennial. They really didn't move. Like they were just two fat people who sat on those bar stools and never moved throughout the bar for the most part. And again, for the most part, yes, there are episodes where they are doing things, but for the
Yeah.
most part, they're just planted on those. Like they're just sitting there. I think that they were not treated in a derogatory way, though. I think that they were treated
Mhm.
in a way that was it sort of ignored their fatness. It didn't recognize it.
Yeah.
And I think that's also sort of another issue that we can look at. Like people who are fat, they have a different sort of life in some ways
Yeah.
than people who are not, and a different life in the sense of like just using you and me, for example, I think that you probably don't think that much about going to a restaurant and where you're sitting like I do.
Yeah.
But I think one of the things when I go into a restaurant, one of the things that I think about is, am I sitting in that seat?
Mhm.
And how comfortable that's going to be, versus, and again, not to assume anything about your own body issues or body perspective or
Yeah.
anything like that,
No, it's a very
but
fair assumption.
um, It's just that's a simple reality that I think a lot of people don't necessarily recognize. So when you do something like when you do a fat suit in a movie,
Yeah.
um, there's sometimes the makeup can be amazing. Like the makeup in the Penguin was incredible. Like that
Hmm.
was probably the best and most convincing fat suit I've ever seen on anybody ever. In the history of cinema, but at the same time, Colin Farrell's never lived his life as a fat person, so
Yeah.
he doesn't necessarily know what comes with that in some ways. Not to say that he didn't do a fabulous job as the Penguin,
Yep.
but he also there is an element there of the fatness that wasn't in his head because he wasn't aware of it.
Yes.
So do I remember? I mean, I remember there was a movie. There's a lot of movies about kids being bullied because they're fat.
Mhm.
That I remember as a kid. I don't remember the names of them, but I remember that was happening.
Yeah.
I remember being fat was bad, and every time you see somebody who was fat, they didn't want to be. So
Yeah. Absolutely.
nobody was ever celebrated or loved because of their body when I remember as a kid. So
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And you're talking about that dichotomy that we see with so many marginalized communities of like, do we lean into all the negative stereotypes of it in storytelling, or for a while, the opposite was like, well, let's just ignore it.
yeah.
We'll cast people, we'll put people in these roles, but we're just gonna, not acknowledge it at all. And the truth is, as it almost always is, someplace in the middle.
And I knew I was gay when I was 12, I think. So
Mhm.
uh, let's not even think about the fact that any queer representation that you saw never was fat,
Yes.
ever.
I mean, that's something like doing an interview where a bunch of people are going to view this. I try to keep this in mind that like you and I, probably without even talking about it, we just know exactly what you're referencing. But actually, if I could, I'd love to ask you explicitly to talk about how body size plays out in the queer community specifically, because I think there's some nuance there that some of our audience might not be aware of.
Well, if you just think about early depictions of queer people, like you never saw um, Will and Grace, you never saw fat queer people,
Mhm.
you never saw them on one of the first things I remember, Dawson's Creek. You never saw that. Well, you never saw fat people in Dawson's Creek at all, I think.
Yeah,
Let alone the queer
Jack
ones.
was not looking for a fat boyfriend on Dawson's
No, he was
Creek.
not at all. I mean, Ellen, you never saw that there.
Mhm.
And then I will sing from the rooftops how important I think queer as folk was as a queer person. I think media depictions of queer people uh, needed queer as folk, and it was very important for me because I was at Justin's age when if you haven't watched Queer as Folk, Justin is the 17-year-old person who is on the who's discovering his queerness amongst a group of older men. But I
Yep.
was Justin's age when Queer as Folk came out, and I that was such an important show for me as I was going off to college and
Mhm.
realizing a queer identity that I couldn't have in a small town that I grew up in.
Yeah.
But let's not pretend that Queer as Folk had any person who was above a 36 waist
Yeah.
on the show. And you just never saw it. And unfortunately, a lot of times they talked about it. There were a lot of lines about not wanting to grow up and be fat and queer, or
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, look at those old fat gay guys over there. And first of all, when they're the people they're pointing to are like size 36.
Yeah.
So there's just that didn't exist. The concept that queer people could also be fat didn't exist because the stereotype was that queer people are thin and beautiful and
Yep.
basically, if you play role playing games, they were like the elves in Dungeons and Dragons. That's what queer people were to the mainstream audience, and
100%.
and then you get to shows well, Modern Family. You get to Modern Family, which is a really important show in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
But if you look at the way that queerness is depicted between a fat person and a thin person, they are the two least sexual characters in the entire series.
Yeah.
Not asexual, because that's a difference, and that's a very important difference.
Hmm.
They're definitely not asexual, but they're treated as unsexual, I guess. Like
Yeah.
they very rarely were in the same bed, or but when they were in the same bed, they were fully clothed and never
Hmm.
touched each other.
Yeah.
Versus the other couples, which were cishetes, They were often having sex. You saw them having sex, making out, kissing.
Mhm.
The only time that you saw the first time you saw Mitchell and Cam have a kiss was in the background of something else that's going on. The focus was on the foreground, and they did a quick peck on the lips in the background.
Yes.
And so media depictions of queerness were not fat and had no fat people in them. And when they were there, they were uh, the the queerness was removed from their lives, and they became sort of uh, stereotypes in many ways. And again, so much important stuff happens in Modern Family, and we should respect all the positive things that they did with that, just like with Queer as Folk. But you can also recognize what was different in there, and that
Yeah.
transcends into the world of queerness in real life. Whereas if you look like me, it's going to be harder for you in mainstream queer spaces, which is a lot
Mhm.
of the reasons why people who are fat queer people created their own spaces. You have bear runs, you have bear bars, you have events for people who are fat and queer or who appreciate fat queer people. And but we had to create our own spaces because
Yeah.
the mainstream queer, which is ridiculous to think about the fact that marginalized groups of queer people are marginalizing other groups of queer people. But that's the reality of it. It
Yeah,
is.
it's very much the truth. And I mean, there's real life implications to this. It's not just social commentary or like philosophical discussion. As a mental health professional, I'll sing from the rooftops about just the rates of eating disorders and body dysmorphia and anxiety, depression that we find in the queer community. And we could go on forever about that, but it definitely some of the messaging that we get about bodies and what is attractive and what makes us valuable absolutely play a huge role in that.
And even today on RuPaul's Drag Race, like
Mhm.
if you look at the pit crew, I don't know if you watch RuPaul's Drag Race. I
Yeah,
watch pretty much everything. The pit crew, again, so many important things that RuPaul's Drag Race has done,
yeah.
but why does the pit crew always look like the same cookie cutter queer person? Uh,
Mhm.
and it's not the case in every country. Other countries have slightly more diversity in their pit crew, but
Yeah,
in the U.S., it's always depicted the same muscular, fit body type, and of course it has the contestants just drooling over them as opposed, but the concept that if you had somebody who looked a little bit different in the pit crew, would they
Mhm.
have the contestants drooling over them as well? That's the question. And then of course there's a lot of applause given by the because many contestants have returned over the years on RuPaul's Drag Race,
Yeah.
and when they return and they've lost weight, sometimes a considerable amount of weight, there's a lot
Mhm.
of praise sung that they've transformed their bodies, regardless of the way that they've done it. And this most recent season, one of the contestants talked about the danger that she went. I don't know their actual pronouns, so we'll use she because that's what they use when they're in drag.
Mhm.
But the contestant talked about the danger that she went through when she went through weight loss surgery because she did it in another country, I believe. And I don't remember 100% if she said it, but I believe she said she almost died
Yeah.
from the weight loss surgery because it was done in a way that was not safe and she, yeah, but that all came after being praised for having lost weight,
Mhm.
and it's like some people lose weight because even fit people. Look at Chadwick Boseman.
Yeah.
If you remember back during COVID, we saw him a few times, and he was looking very, very, very thin, and people were either criticizing that or complimenting him for all the weight loss he had done,
Yeah.
and first of all, Chadwick Boseman was not was not a fat person to begin with, but and so it turned out he was very very ill, and that was the case.
Yeah. For sure. I think, one of the themes you're talking about too is just how we as a society, and again, I'm not going to pretend I'm above it, but like we as people, we just think we have this need or this right to like project our thought or opinion onto another person, right? And it's
It's
kind of like,
unfortunate,
why do
but
we
fatness
even?
is the one thing that people seem okay to comment on or
Hmm.
criticize or judge somebody about. Uh, it's the one sort of, well, actually, in New York, it's more of a protected class now, actually. But because you can't in New York City, not hire someone because of their height and or weight. So,
Okay.
but
Baby
outside of New
steps.
York City, there's a lot of places where it's still fine to do that. So,
Yeah, sure. So I know we could talk about this forever, and it's
it's a very
fascinating,
fun
and I'm
topic.
glad
I
that
don't know
we
if it's a fun
are.
topic, but it's an important topic.
It's an important
I
topic.
use fun way too much, I think, sometimes. You commented on that before. Fun is my go-to word of like things I enjoy talking about or enjoy engaging in.
Yep.
But it doesn't necessarily mean fun the way that the that everyone else conceives it. It's fun for me in the sense of, oh, this I want to do more of this. So,
For those listening, before I hit record, we have Joshua R. Pangborn on the record saying that Bring Her Back is a fun movie.
and I will say it is a fun movie. Fun in a way that makes no sense to most people in my head, but
I
to me
I
it
love
does.
it.
So.
It's all subjective. But yeah, we should I do want to shift over to talk about your specific work and make sure we have some time for that. So you are about to start a new round of fundraising, right, for your next feature, The Contract?
That's right. The contract, we have done pretty much all principal photography,
Okay.
and we are very, very far along in the post-production process. We have a beautiful rough cut done. I don't know if beautiful is the word we use for rough cuts, but it's the one I'm using. So basically, when you're a writer, I will say this, you make words mean what you want them to mean in your head. They don't always mean what the rest of the world thinks they are. You have to use the context around it to conceive
Absolutely.
that. But we have a very really strong rough cut. It is where we want it to be, and we are going to hopefully. Well, let's see. We do have to do a couple pickup shots. Now that we have seen what we have, we know we want to go back, and we need to do a little bit more angles, a little bit more coverage of things. This movie was done in 8.5 days.
Oh
So
wow.
that's a very, very fast amount of time for those of you who don't know to do a feature
Mhm.
film. And it's also the best looking movie and probably the best movie in general that I think I've ever made. So I'm really thrilled by that. But at the same time, 8.5 days, you have to make some sacrifices. And now that we're in the rough cut phase, we see where we need to go back and give a little bit more focus and attention
Yeah.
to the a certain scene here or there. So we're going to go back and do some pickup shots in November. But that means we have to rent the cabin again. We have to bring everybody back up there. We have to get
Okay.
food and all that stuff. And then after that, in December is the goal. We're moving into audio and uh, composition for music. So that's going to require all the post production sound work and all of the sound design and everything, and that costs often more than you would imagine it would, because audio post production is the one of the most important things you can do. Audio in general is one of the
Yeah.
most important things you can do in a film, and so because of that, funds are where we are. I need to do another round of our fundraising for crowdfunding, and hopefully people will be excited by what they see. I'm going to be releasing a trailer very soon as part of this, so they will get a chance to see what the movie is looking like. I'll have some stills that I'll release as well of more of the movie, and hopefully you'll be engaged and interested enough by what you see to want to help support us a little bit. So
Yeah,
that is the
absolutely.
goal, and I think October 1st is when we're looking at for starting the next round. So
Okay, fantastic. And you'll hopefully send us some of that stuff and we'll make sure to include it in our coverage on the website so people can find the fundraiser, find the trailer, all that
absolutely.
stuff.
And it's also really easy because the website that you're going to want to use is thecontractfilm.com.
Okay.
So it's there for you, marketed beautifully and nice branding and all that. So
Nice. Very simple. Now from having read your book and I did see the trailer, am I right in understanding that this is an adaptation of one of the stories from Homo Phobias, your
it
book, right?
is, yes. So Homo Phobias is the book that I released last year on September 13th, 2024.
Mhm.
And it was comprised of a collection of short stories that I essentially want to film someday. So these are
Okay.
all ideas that I have to film that I thought, you know what? I have a lot of ideas. Let's put them down on paper and share them with the world and see what people think of them as short stories. Is anything
Kind of genius. You found a way to like monetize your to-do list, and I love that.
I have so many things I want to do. I thought I will I ever get to all of them? Yes,
Mhm.
but might as well get to them a little earlier because I have wanted to release a book for a long time, and this was a really great time to do it. Defear, the editor, Defear Jackson, came to me and said, "I think you should release a book. I will help you make it happen." And he did. He did all this amazing work to support me. Because for me, the thing I didn't want to do and the reason that was stopping me from releasing a book was I didn't have the time to teach myself this extra uh, step because I was so focused on making movies, making series that
Mhm.
I didn't have time to learn the formatting of making a book and all the ins and outs and nuances that go into the construction of the book phase. And so he took all of that on. He made my life easy. So all I had to do with this was focus on writing, which was a
Mhm.
nice change of pace. And I am so grateful to him for having helped with that.
Definitely. What so with the contract, like what can you tell us about what the story is about? What
Absolutely. The story of the contract. Well, the contract is I'm calling it a gothic erotic horror film. It
Mhm.
is about a man named Oliver who is looking for a place to belong, a family, a home, some place that will give him what he needs that he's not getting in his life. And he decides to go out into the woods to a remote area and meet someone he
Mhm.
met online, which is always a good way to start off your relationship, by meeting somebody in the remote wilderness.
That
And
a very relatable experience, especially for queer people.
very, very familiar for queer people. Goodness, yes. Far too familiar. And actually, we even talk about that in the movie. So, so he goes out to the wilderness and he finds the home of Bartolo, who is a BDSM master. And Oliver decides to find out if he could submit himself to consideration for ownership by this BDSM master.
Mhm.
And from there, things don't go as planned, I guess we'll say.
Okay, good. I needed you to give me a synopsis so that I didn't accidentally spoil it in our conversation because I don't know what I'm allowed to share.
I
But
would
it
say that's what you're allowed to
definitely,
share, basically. So
yeah, it definitely gets more
it's probably the
complicated.
kinkiest and queerest film I've ever made, which is
Mhm.
a lot because I make very, very kinky and queer films. But this is by far the kinkiest and queerest thing I've ever done. We incorporate a good deal of nudity that I've never worked with before. So this is a fresh take for me on things. Um, and it's beautiful. The director of photography is so talented. He has done been the DP for Hollow Lake by Troy Escamilla, I believe.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and
I
he's
we
also the
spoke to him.
DP. Yeah, Troy is amazing. He's also the DP for Meat by Roger Connors.
Oh my God,
Uh,
you're in good company.
so he has made incredible films, and he's cornering the market on being the DP for queer horror, I think. So.
There is that. It's a good niche. Get in there. So I mean, you mentioned how like sex forward this story is, and that like that's another major theme in your storytelling, right? Like they
Mhm.
are they're very kinky, they're very sexy, and very like celebratorily so. Um, what I noticed too, though, is that, and this is, I think, just the beauty of representation when you have someone like yourself who's making so many, telling so many stories in this space, is you're not beholden to just showing it in one way.
Mhm.
Like you show the beauty and the joy in this kind of sex, and then you also aren't afraid to show like the dark side of it too, and what
Mhm.
happens when it goes bad, or when someone abuses the power that they have over somebody. Um, so I guess that's more of a statement than a question, but I guess can you just talk about why it's important to you to it to be so sex forward and to depict this in your stories?
Well, I think it's the case even with my depictions of queer people and fat people in general. It's that
Hmm.
um, there's a good and a bad, and I think we get really stuck. I think a lot of queer artists get really stuck on only showing positives and only showing depicting us, and by us I mean the collective queer community or the collective kink community or collective everything, um, as faultless or flawless and not having any sort of darkness to them. And there is a case to be made that that's necessary, but at the same time, in a world where, which I generally write, in a world where everybody is queer and everybody is kinky, some people have to be bad, and
Yeah,
sometimes there has to be some sort of conflict, and the conflict can't be always um, all these good, fat, queer, sexy people versus this angry, straight, thin person.
hmm
It can't be that all the time,
yeah,
and it has to be. It's also boring. It limits us and restricts us to trying to live our lives outside of media,
hmm
mimicking this sort of lifestyle. And I don't think that's fair to us because there are days where we have bad experiences. It also tells us that not every fat queer person is a good person. And you have to be careful because when you go out and you find someone and you date them, they
hmm
might not always be a good relationship for you. And you
yeah,
need to be aware of that. And it's just because that's what you're looking for
hmm
doesn't mean what you find at that moment is the right one for you, and you need to be careful about that.
yeah,
And also, it's just really boring and restricts us to only being angels and angelic and safe characters. And as an actor and a writer, it's boring to write us that way
yeah,
because there's so much more to us. We're three dimensional, and we have good days and bad days. We have days where darkness is what comes over us.
hmm
We have days where we need to be who we are, and sometimes who we are is shades of gray.
yeah. I think what you said about kind of the dangers really resonated for me, and kind of what you said earlier about the risks of like meeting people on the internet that I think so many queer people can relate to. I think that is one of the dangers of suppressing any community or any type of lifestyle and like pushing it into the shadows. You hear so many people say like, oh, well, I don't care what you do, but just keep it in the bedroom where it
Mhm.
belongs. Like, don't talk about it. We don't need to see it. Intellectually, I understand why someone might say that, but I think what they don't get is the risk that comes with pushing those things away, because
Mhm.
when you take any lifestyle, any community, and make it so that people can't express it, can't explore it openly, they're left with no choice but to sometimes do very risky things, things that can be dangerous. Again, I won't go into details and I won't ask you details, but I think any queer person could tell a couple kind of horror stories from when they're younger about meeting someone they probably shouldn't have,
Mhm.
taking a risk where they maybe put themselves into danger. Um, and that happens when you are not able to just live openly and talk about your sexual orientation, your gender, your sexual kinks and interests in an open space. Um,
And that is not to say that there are not amazingly kind people out there that I'm
mhm,
sure you and I both have met that are out there, and you'll encounter them and it'll be a great experience and you'll have amazing, amazing time with them. And then they might even become good friends.
mhm.
But that's also not to pretend that there aren't people out there who take advantage of you and abuse you and uh, do it behind
Yeah.
closed doors.
Yep.
And that's the danger of that. And
Yeah. And I talked, like you mentioned, Troy and Roger, I talked to them about this too. The idea of, I think when you have queer people behind the scenes writing the stories,
Mhm.
you can tell intention. Like we can sniff that out, right? If it's some straight cis heteronormative person writing the same stories that you're writing, it's going to feel very different because we
Mhm.
don't we don't know that we can trust their intention. Are you mocking us? Are you using us to kind of push some message? But like you have the right to tell these stories. We trust you.
And that's what I love about Troy and Roger. And also, I don't know if you've met Monster Makeup in Rhode Island, Brandon and his crew. Uh, these are all queer people who are making queer stories for queer people. Other
Mhm.
people can and should watch them, but these are queer stories for queer people, and that's what I try to do as well. I early on in my career, I had people tell me you need to include more straight people in your work because there's not enough straight people, and I'm like, well, goodness, migration. Oh god,
God
there's not enough
forbid.
straight people in my stories. Oh no, what am I going to do? They have no other stories for representation. It's just not. I sadly gave in early on, but I learned very quickly that that is not important in this case. Like straight people have plenty of stories, and there's plenty of representation of good, bad, and neutral relationships of straight people. So we don't need to see. I don't need to write straight people because they will always have somebody else writing them,
Yeah,
basically. So.
for sure. You just keep doing your thing. So I know you've given us the details
Oh,
on the plot.
I did want to say though,
Oh yeah.
there is something interesting about that because you said that you can always sniff out or tell when a queer person is writing something. I don't think that's always the case with a fat person though, because one
Mm.
of the stories in Homo Phobias, Crumbs, which was republished from an earlier publication that I did, uh, I get a bunch of comments talking about how fat phobic Crumbs is,
Oh,
and
really? Okay.
it's fascinating to me to see that somebody for people who don't know my work and were reading that story, they can
Hmm.
tell what is going on in that story from a fat perspective. So
Hmm.
that's really interesting for me to know. It's unfortunate for me to know that people are perceiving it that way, and just as many people are perceiving it the other way. But it was very interesting and eye opening to see somebody literally call that story fat phobic, and
Yeah. Yeah.
I would never would have in a million years thought of that as a as an adjective to describe anything I do. So.
Yeah. I mean, it just shows how like just on guard, I think people in marginalized
But
communities are
I
that.
think it's because people aren't used to seeing depictions of fat people in any other way other than the traditional. And
Mhm.
so when they see somebody depicted in a way that is sexual and maybe even devious,
Yeah.
without spoiling crumbs too much, uh, they think, oh, well, this is clearly a fat phobic story then. So.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and there's something about like one of my personal experience while reading through homophobias was that I think there's a real benefit to just the ex almost the exposure therapy of it, of reading multiple stories depicting these kinds of characters, because I hope I'm not telling on myself too much, but like again, I'm a human, I live in the world, I have all the same prejudices that we're all born with. When I first started reading it, I did for a minute start find myself thinking like, oh, is this a little much? Like, are we going a little over the top with the sexual stuff? But as it progressed, I really tried to interrogate and challenge why would I think that? Where's that coming from? And it's coming from a place of I'm I'm not used to seeing these kinds of stories, right? And
Mhm.
that I think is one of the first responses that we often have when we see stuff that we're not used to seeing is like like yeah, like kind of pushing it away and saying
Mhm.
that's too much. Don't force me to confront my own internal stigmas and demons. I don't want to do that. But then by the end of the book, yeah, I was just loving it as a book. I was just reading it for the characters and like, oh, that's fucking sexy. That's scary. That's creepy. That's funny. Um, and I don't know if that was your intention at all, but I hope that that's many people's experience reading your book and watching your stories.
I don't know if I don't know if that was my intention, but I am glad to hear that it was the way it came across for you. I don't necessarily know how many readers are as introspective as you in that regard. To think,
Yeah.
why am I finding it to be too much? I did wonder if it's a lot when I put it together because it's a lot of fat queer kinky stuff in the stories. But at the same time, I'm like, well, this is the stories I tell, and
Yes.
yes, it might be. It just comes across a lot more because you're reading it on paper.
Yeah.
And it was the first time I've ever done a book before, so it was
Yeah.
very different than putting it in a film or something.
Yeah.
Because I could depict anything I wanted in a book.
Yeah.
On film, you have to work with actors and make sure that they're comfortable with it. And the first thing and the most important thing I always do with an actor when they get a script of mine is I tell them if there's something you're not comfortable with in this
Mhm.
script, let's talk about it and let's see what you're not comfortable with and what we need to alter or suggestively show or talk about or change. And because I want you to feel safe and most comfortable more than anything else. That's the
Yeah.
most important thing.
That's
How can we get
wonderful
the
to
vision
hear.
to go along with your comfortability? That's the most important thing.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, because people, again, I think people who aren't that knowledgeable about kink and fetish sometimes think it's like, oh, is it dangerous?
Mm-hmm.
It must be making people uncomfortable. But like, in my day job, I work with a lot of people around their thoughts and feelings around kink, and I have found that no, they're generally the people who are putting consent and comfort like at the top priority, more so than, if you just have two people having like missionary sex, like nobody's stopping to ask that partner, are you comfortable with this? Because it's so typical. But once you get into things that are more outside the box, you do have to start asking those questions. And we should be asking those questions across the board.
And I think in homophobia is a lot. There is a lot to do with consent in homophobias, and
Mm,
there's a lot of consent is where things come from,
yeah.
and now sometimes that consent leads to darkness because it's a horror story collection, but
Yeah.
still, it's consent is where things begin. So
So the deal with the devil, it's like technically you knew what you were getting into.
well, that's a gray area that one, but
Um, I could talk to you about all this stuff for like another hour. I'm loving this conversation, but in the interest of being realistic, we should probably start to wrap this up. Um, is there anything else about your book, Homophobias, or about the contract that I haven't asked or that you would want to make sure to share when you have the moment?
Well, Homophobia is the hardcover collection. You briefly talked about it. That's going to be coming out soon. The hardcover is really, really fun because it is slightly. It's a new cover, and also inside, I commissioned some illustrations to go with each story, and so there's an illustration with each story as well. So that's something different. Also, there is a foreword by the wonderful Sean Abley, who is a wonderful writer and
Mhm.
connoisseur of queer horror. And in addition to that, there will be a QR code at the back of the book, which will take you to the trailer for the contract. So you will be able to actually see the trailer when using the QR code. That book should be ready in a few weeks as well. So
Okay.
hopefully you'll be able to get it. Right now, you can get the ebook and the paperback on Amazon, but you can get the hardcover soon. And if anybody wants a signed copy of the paperback or the hardcover, you can actually reach out to me directly and I can send you a copy. It will be slightly different price because I have to do the shipping and all that, but
Mhm.
it is something that is available for you. So if you want that, just let me know and we can do that.
Fantastic.
As far as the contract itself, that movie is coming along soon and I'm really, really, really excited for you all to see it. Hopefully, it will be ready for screenings in I have a very um, lofty goal of February for it to be ready, which would be 1 year after we filmed it. So that's the goal.
A
And
very
then
impressive
hopefully you'll be able
turnaround
to see it.
time.
It's well, I work with a really good and solid co-editor on this, who is also the DP. So we seem to have found like a great rhythm and a great desire to put out something together very quickly. So hopefully that will happen. And then soon you'll be hearing about my. Once this is out, you'll be hearing about my fourth feature very soon because I've started writing that. So I can't wait for you to see that coming along. And then I think that's everything for the contract and
Yeah.
homophobias.
How do people find you online? Because you're probably the best source of all this information.
Absolutely. You can reach me on Instagram at Sidekick Productions. You can
Okay.
reach me on uh, YouTube at youtube.com/sidekick productions. If you really like what we do, you can go to my Patreon and join for as little as $3 a month and get patreon.com/sidekick productions.
Okay.
You'll be able to see a lot of BTS there. You'll be able to see updates before other people do for the web series and the trailers and everything. You'll see that at least a week ahead of time for everybody else. You'll be able to join the private Discord where people from the crew and the super fans are there talking about everything we do and also
Mhm.
just talk in general and have a good time. And You can reach me on Blue Sky at joshua.r.pangborn at sidekickproductions.org. Uh, and I think, oh, and TikTok, as long as it's still around, I am there at Sidekick Productions as well.
Fantastic. And yeah, and people listening to this should just realize like how prolific Joshua's work is. Like I feel like we just barely scratched the surface in talking about the projects that you have out there. So definitely uh, check out his accounts, check out his websites, look at all the amazing stuff that he's doing.
Oh, and since you talked about the Brooklyn Butcher, I forgot
Yeah.
about that. That should be streaming very soon, for you to see at home, everybody. And if you really want a physical copy, we should be having a Blu-ray available for you very, very, very soon as well. So follow me on Instagram or somewhere else, and you'll see all of this information and be able to procure your own copy if you'd like.
Fantastic. Well, Joshua, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. And thank you, everybody watching and listening. We really appreciate it. So this is Brian Finnerty from Macabre Daily, just saying goodbye. See y'all later.
Thank you all so much.